I'm Terry Smith, professor of political science at Columbia College, and I'm pleased to be speaking with Representative Kip Kendrick, a Democratic member of the Missouri House of Representatives. His district includes part of the city of Columbia. He was first elected in 2014 and is an alumnus of Columbia College. Kip, thank you, and welcome to Political Science 350.
All right, thank you, Dr.
Process. Today's conversation is about campaigns and elections. And in this class, we talk about the 9 elements of effective campaigns. And I'd like you to discuss your campaign in terms of some of these elements and start with the theme of it. So everybody has an elevator speech that they give to people, the short version of what they stand for. What's your elevator speech?
Right. It's a good question. So let me just give a little bit of background on what my campaigns have looked like. So please. I ran, first announced in 2013, about I think it was October 2013, that I'd be running for the House seat in a November election for 2014. So as a year out, I ended up getting out doing a lot of work, which I'll talk about in a little bit, very early on. Ran completely unopposed that first election. So kind of what I'm going to talk through and kind of my approach ended up being a little bit different, because starting in March, end of March through November, when I realized I was unopposed, you take it a little bit different tone than you would if you had an opposition. My first re-elect was 2016. I was mostly unopposed until I had a late entry of an independent candidate. And then this time around, 2018, I'm unopposed again, and so we'll be serving my third term in office. So kind of laying that as a groundwork, my elevator pitch was very consistent from the beginning, and it was to try to reach a broad audience early. I represent a very heavily Democratic district, a DPI performance of about 65+%. So it what would be considered a safe Democratic district, but wanted to make sure that I was seen as representing the entire district. Elevator pitch was early on. My name's Kip Kendrick. Was born and raised in Northeast Missouri in a conservative family. I'm a Democrat. I'm interested in going to Jefferson City to represent everyone. I'm not going down there to throw bombs. I'm not going down there to be a partisan hack. I'm going down there to address the issues that face all Missourians. And, I come from a generation where I think that we see a lot of the tremendous hurdles that we're going to face as we grow older. And, looking at my child's generation as well, and some of the difficulties that they will address. And so I want to focus on what we can do to bring the state together to push Missouri forward. And, if you're looking for someone who's going to go down there and throw bombs, that's not me. That's not my personality. That's not how I want to operate in office. But I want to go down there and work with everyone and not pick fights just to pick fights. I'll stand up for what I believe in. I'll stand up for the district, but I'm not going to go down there just to fight.
So let's pursue that. What do you believe in? What are some of the issues that are really important for you as a legislator?
What I believe in really aligns very closely with the district as well. So I represent 3 higher education institutions: Columbia College, Stevens College, University of Missouri. Moberly Area Community College has just right outside my district, but I consider them part of the 45th as well. K-12 education is very important to the district. Healthcare, I represent Boone Hospital, I represent the University of Missouri Hospital. Women's and Children's Hospital is right on the edge of the district. Landmark Hospital as well. I've got a lot of providers, healthcare providers in the district. And insurance also, it's another major employer in the city of Columbia. City of Columbia is, it's a place where innovation happens, and it's a fairly young population of individuals, and innovation, workforce development is critical. So those basically align with my beliefs and what I intended to do heading into office is address issues related to healthcare, address issues related to education, in particular funding for education, and policy related to higher education and the issue of student debt is an area where I've really focused in on. So that'll
resonate with some of the students watching this.
Sure, yeah. It's again, I just feel blessed to be in a district. It sounds somewhat cliche, but to be in a district that where my interests really aligned with what the overall interest of the district is.
So you've touched on this a little bit, but what do you want voters to know about you as an individual?
Yeah, sure, right? I mean, I grew up in a small town. I grew up to two working parents. I've worked hard my entire life, I feel like, to get to where I am, and I'm a person who understands that I understand that I don't have all the answers. I'm a subject matter expert, I feel like, in some education related issues. That's what my master's degree in, but we deal with some very complex issues, some very complex problems at the state level, and I'm willing to listen to whoever and whoever's willing to engage me. It doesn't matter what partisan, what side of the aisle you're on, or what your beliefs are, or what issues you're pushing. And I showed that early on in my 2014 election when I soon after I announced, I started doing listening sessions with community leaders, business leaders throughout the district. That was to get to know them, but also to listen to what they had to say. I would come to each one of these meetings with a list of questions, and I'd work through them, and I'd take notes on it. And it was really about listening to get a good understanding of what the needs of the district were, to get a good understanding of what needs of business were, and then take that knowledge and into my first term in office.
So what are some of the groups, and you again touched on this, that you work closely with to get your agenda put into place, or to get some policy down the road?
Yeah. I don't want this to sound cliche because I know I'm talking to students, but I think students is one of the largest groups that I've actually tried to engage with the most, or actively tried to engage with. In particular, there's student groups through the University of Missouri, ASUM, Associated Students at University of Missouri, Graduate Professional Council, which is GPC at the University of Missouri. Two of those groups reached out to me early about working on the issue of student debt. And it was an area that I studied during my time working on a master's degree. And I made each student group that I've ever spoken to a promise, and I still to this day will do it. Students often, younger population, don't vote. I think I saw a poll earlier today, the 18 to 29-year-old age bracket. I think, 25 to 30% of them are absolutely certain they're going to vote, and that's people polled, and that's probably a little bit overestimating that population. So, younger students don't necessarily vote, so they're not necessarily spoken to by politicians often, or elected officials. So I made a group a promise. I will always listen to them. I will engage them. They have to promise me that they're going to vote and participate in each election, whether they voted for me. I wasn't trying to get them to vote for me, but it was, make sure you vote. I don't care who you vote for, just be engaged. And I will engage you in a conversation. And that's really where I developed, 3 pieces of legislation that I'll file again this year. One that got very close to getting across the finish line last year, but around the issue of student debt, a student loan refinancing bill, a student loan bill of rights, and then a state work study program, all really aimed at addressing the issue of student debt and what we can do to alleviate that problem.
You don't have to raise money like somebody who's in a bitterly competitive district election after election, but you still do fundraising.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that and how you raise money, and then what you do with it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is we could speak for hours on this, right? How you fundraise. Early on, so soon after I formed my committee, right? I mean, you're starting to make those calls, and you go for the low-hanging fruit. You call friends and family first, and you go for whatever low-hanging fruit there is out there in order to start building a war chest and start raising money for your campaign. And then soon after that, in 2013, after I started going through those low-hanging fruit, I started making just cold calls to people in the district, people that I don't necessarily know. I may know the name, I may have met them before, but they may not remember me. So it was making cold calls, and I, remember those very vividly. Some of those first calls I made to people, and basically the phone conversation went like this. It was, "Hi, I'm Kip Kendrick. I'm running for 45th District Representative. I have the support of Chris Kelly, who was the incumbent at that point. He was leaving office and endorsed me, and it would pretty much going right into the ask immediately. I'd try to get to the ask within 20 to 30 seconds in the call, would you be willing to make a contribution? I hired folks to help me run the campaign and also help me do the fundraising. And so we had good data on who had been contributing to campaigns, kind of what their average give was. And so, you look and see what they've been averaging other House races, and you ask for a little bit more. I always learned, ask for a specific dollar amount and ask for a little bit more, because you don't want to ask them for too less, because they will definitely meet you there. So, that call time, it's stressful. And to this day, I don't do as much call time now in a non-competitive race. But, it's stressful. You're making cold calls. You're getting turned down quite a bit. Very rarely will you have someone be rude to you. But it's so important, and it's not just about raising the money. Some of those early calls I made were actually building the support that I would need and getting my name out there to people. And it's much more effective at times than knocking on doors. Much more time, efficient use of time. But then if someone says no, I probably not in a place to give, but I can help you. I can put a yard sign in, or if you need some help canvassing, I can help do that. So, is very worthwhile experience, and it's good to be turned down too. It's good to be told no. And just keep pushing through, keep pushing through on those calls. So, in a non-competitive race, I'm not actively fundraising. A good amount of money that I'm receiving right now is coming from larger organizations. I'm not raising money from individuals at this time. I don't think it's fair for me to ask individuals to contribute to my campaign when there are a lot of hands out at this point. We're right in the middle. Here we are filming, I think 26, 25 days out from the November general election. So there are a lot of people asking for contributions. The individual ask that I'm making right now to individuals around the community, around Boone County, are specifically to go to the House Victory Committee, which is a campaign or an organization that helps House Democrats in their campaign. So the money that I'm raising is going from individuals is going to that, and then I'm also contributing. Probably over the last 2 election cycles, I've contributed about $35,000-$40,000 from my campaign committee to Democrats or to an HBC organization, then helped raise an additional amount from individuals going to that.
So I'm in your district,
Right.
and I get your emails, and I get the occasional snail mail mailer from you.
Right.
Talk a little bit about your media strategy as a legislator, and then also specifically as a campaigner. But how do you use regular media, traditional, and then how do you use social media?
Sure. Social media I use to reach constituents, voters, likely voters directly, or just people that you want to bring into the fold and keep them updated, get your name out there. So I tend to, partly because I've been in non-competitive races for the most part, I tend to do more social media ad buys than I have done traditional media ad buys. I think we're starting to see, we are seeing more social media ad buys, kind of not necessarily biting into the traditional media ad buy realm, but like definitely starting to split off and be popular and be very effective at reaching directly reaching voters in a cost-effective way. Columbia has a lot of media outlets, right? There is no where I talk to some of my colleagues in Jefferson City from around the state, and they love they're somewhat envious of my situation with being able to call a press conference in Columbia. And you're probably at least going to get 5 or 6 different student organizations or student reporters there to cover it. And then likely you're going to get KOMU or KMIZ or the combination of the two there. So you're going to have some television, you're going to have traditional newspaper. And 2 daily newspapers,
Right. Which is really unusual.
It is. So the traditional coverage that we can get here in Columbia is pretty unique for legislators in general. But it also comes with a bit of a caveat, right? That can also come back to bite you. You see a lot of the negative pieces that are out there, especially in in local House races or Senate races, a lot of those negative pieces are direct quotes that come from a newspaper or from a clip that you did that may be taken out of context, or maybe you just weren't polished on your answer or response.
That's my favorite politician's statement. I was quoted out of context.
right. So, but you will see a lot of whether it be a mailer or a TV ad by pulling directly a quote that you've said on something. So
there's no place to hide these days.
No, there's not. No, so but I engage the traditional media, and I try to call back reporters every chance I get. And sometimes it's even hard to keep up with them here in Columbia. When it's not uncommon to get 2-3 calls a day at times. But it's important to engage them. I mean, there's still a strong market in Columbia even, and throughout the state for traditional media.
Last question for you, Representative Kendrick. Between campaigns, how do you use forums and community events?
So when we're talking during session, and I'll even kind of touch on campaigns. So I'm unopposed. I'm still attending campaign forums because I think it's important for me to make sure I'm still getting my name out there, because whether I'm running right now or not, in 2 years I will be back on the ballot. So, and chances are I'll have competition at that point. So, you're constantly campaigning if you're in the House, whether you're in the Missouri House or U.S. House, or your cycles every 2 years. You're constantly wanting to get your name out there, needing to get your name out there. So, I still attend all the forums that I'm invited to and that I'm asked to attend. If my schedule allows, to engage citizens. And then when we're in session, as soon as campaign ends, and there is that month and a half lull, and then you start going to forums again to talk about the upcoming legislative session. And then as the session begins, January really through, I'd say early March, sometimes even mid-March now, you're doing 2 or 3 forums a week, and these forums are different interest groups around the city, or sometimes the regional area, that invite you to come speak, take questions from them directly that they may have pre-prepared, but then also take questions directly from individuals that are unscreened, or could be who knows what the topic that is going to be discussed, who knows what's going to be brought up. And so that's always good. It's good practice, right? And it's good practice to be able to answer a wide variety of questions. And then at least 2 to 3 times a year, on average at 3 times a year, I'll do an open town hall where send a mailer out to the entire district, to every household in the district, do a social media push and do an email listserv to promote it, and just take questions. Whenever I do a town hall, I'll speak 10 to 15 minutes, maybe at most, to kind of introduce the town hall, and then I'll just start taking questions. And from anyone, comes with a bit of a risk, right? You always have a chance of someone, of a plant being there, someone who has an agenda to push, who is going to get you on the record on something. But that's what it's about. I mean, when you're representing roughly 37,000 people, you should be accessible. You should be available to answer questions. You should be available to take meetings with constituents. To engage the local groups.
That's what you signed up for.
Right, yeah. And I mean, that's truly what I believe in. I mean, you're not going to be able to craft my agenda without truly listening and being able to be responsive and represent what the district wants.
Anything that we haven't covered that we should regarding campaigns and being a state legislator?
Going back to 2013, when I ran, so I think, I don't want to brag or be boastful, but I think that was a lot of my hard work very early on, and being strategic in my announcement and backing of a longtime legislator at that point, Chris Kelly, who endorsed me before I announced, and it was part of my announcement. I announced again, like in early October, and started knocking doors immediately, which was fairly early on, right? Like typically you don't see people knocking doors until spring, or sometimes not even until summer. But I knocked doors that fall all the way through the winter, and that was 2013. We had record cold temperatures that year, and I remember, there were several weekends where Sarah, my wife, was like, "What are you doing?" And people on the doors, "What are you doing?" But it was to lay a strong foundation. It was to show people that I was willing to get out and do the work, and knocking on doors is critical. Getting out and walking the district, you get to meet people at their door. They're somewhat surprised to see you. You will have candid conversations with them, but then you also get to look around. You get to see the different, disparities of parts of your district, different neighborhoods that are going to have different interests or different needs that you can identify just even walking the district. So I got out and knocked a lot of doors very early on, met with a lot of people, did a tremendous amount of work through March, and by the end of filing, no one had filed against me, and I do think it was very specific. It was I wanted
strategic.
I wanted to get out early and strong, set a tone, raise a good amount of money, which I did early on, but also get out and knock a lot of doors and make a lot of phone calls, have a lot of meetings in order to kind of clear the field. You want to. In a race, you want to make sure that you make someone who's thinking about jumping in second guess whether they should jump in or not. And I felt like I did that early on. And hopefully, I think part of the reason we want to pose right now is I think I've done a fairly decent job of representing the district, and hopefully continue to do so in the future.
We've been talking with Representative Kip Kendrick about campaigns and elections, and in our next interview, we'll be talking about the legislative process.